Picture this, it's the 16th century in Ireland. You roll off your hay bed first thing, it's cold, rainy, and wet. You feel like absolute garbage and you're starving for some good food. You quickly mix up your favorite meal called beer soup and pour yourself a nice, refreshing, lukewarm beer. You have to chow this stuff down before you go work for the nobles of your land. As you go to head out the door and go to work, your fellow peasants come up to you, tell you about a new warm drink to keep you warm while it's raining and wet and foggy and miserable in this horrible land. This drink would be called coffee, and it would be the start of the sobering up of Europe. Coffee changed the entire world, and caffeine is still used as a heavy stimulant in our current society. Caffeine has been shown to have countless health benefits. You're less likely to get Alzheimer's, it increases your cerebral blood flow, it can even reduce your hearing loss. I don't even understand how that's feasibly possible. Caffeine is probably one of the most widely accepted drugs in the entire world, and there's good reason for it. Like I said, countless health benefits. So with all these health benefits, why would anyone ever want to give up caffeine? Well, a couple times a year, I would go on what I call a caffeine detox. I would be at work drinking about 4 cups of coffee, come home, have my scoop of pre-workout, and I would be cracked out of my mind the entire day. Whenever I get to this point, I would just say, okay, we need a tolerance break. And for an entire week, I would not drink any caffeine. During these detoxes, I would become essentially a slug. I would lose all my motivation, I would get pretty much no work done the entire time, and I would become incredibly irritable. And so this led me to start questioning how much of my productivity and motivation and success in life is myself and how much of it is this drug that I'm taking. I also would notice how incredibly different my personalities and my drive was whenever I would have caffeine versus when I didn't have caffeine. So when I'd start the work day, it'd be 6 a.m. in the morning, I'd go to the coffee room and I would get my cup of coffee and talk to my coworkers a little bit. After that, I'd be super motivated for 3 to 4 hours. But as the day progressed, I would lose this drive. And so by the time I would get home at 4 to 5 p.m. at night, all that drive and motivation that I had at the beginning of the day was non-existent. This would become a problem for my 5 to 9 job because I'd have no energy or motivation. Why would I want to go home and do more work whenever I don't have the motivation to do it in the first place? Working kind of sucks, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. So the only way I'd be able to get that motivation and that energy to continue to work in my 5 to 9 job is by having more caffeine. So I started to wonder, how the heck did I have energy to do a bunch of things whenever I was younger as a kid? Whenever you're in high school, my classes started at 7:10 in the morning and my school ended at 1:50. I'll go to cross country practice at 3 p.m., run until 6, go home and do my homework, and then still have the motivation and energy to do my own hobbies. And most people will say that's just part of growing up. As you get older, you don't have as much energy. And I used to be a big believer in this until I met my friend Jacob. He was a random stranger who I met cliff jumping in Oregon. He was always super happy, had endless energy, and was never anxious about anything. It didn't matter what he was doing, he had no fear of it. He had total confidence in himself. To do this, I started learning more and more about the negative side effects of caffeine, mostly surrounding your mental health. I saw that even moderate dosages can spike your cortisol level, lead to higher feelings of anxiety, and a higher chance of depression. And I also began to understand better the mechanism behind how caffeine gives you energy. It really doesn't give you energy, it just blocks a receptor that makes you tired. So after the caffeine wears off, all those receptors that were blocked are now all free to roam in your body, and you're just all of a sudden gonna crash even harder. Which makes sense why I was always more and more tired after I'd have my caffeine at work. So I decided, why not give quitting caffeine a shot? Well, actually, that's not really how it went down. I stayed at work until 2 a.m. one day drinking a boatload of caffeine. Got off work, I'm starving for food. And I go to this Mexican restaurant that everyone at my work says is an excellent Mexican restaurant from 5 a.m. to 12 a.m. But from 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. they're just a drug dealing house. So I go and I'm like, I don't even care. I'm not gonna worry about their warnings to not eat here at those hours. So I go, get my food, and I get the worst stomach bug in my entire life. I'm down for 5 days. Like, I'm saying the only thing I can do is if I even look at food, I'm spraying the toilet. It was horrible. So after this 5-day bug finally ended, I decided to just continue to quit caffeine. Because I couldn't eat or drink anything, so I had no caffeine, so I was caffeine free for 5 days. And I figured the majority of the side effects are probably done, right? You know, the headaches that people will talk about, supposed to be gone within the first 5 days. But boy, was I wrong. I found out there's a lot more side effects to quitting caffeine. Obviously, you got your standard ones. You're more irritable, you get headache, things like that, right? The obvious ones. But I found out through days 5 through 21 what some of the other side effects were. So on day 5, I went back to work and I was completely useless. I was essentially just a body, a completely useless zombie. I was irritable, I was exhausted, and I had literally no motivation. I also had like this weird fog going on where you could tell me something and I would forget like 2 minutes later, so I'd have to write everything down. And that was what was going on at work. Outside of work, pretty much I would go home, I would sleep immediately, I would wake up, cook, eat, and then go back to sleep again. The gym, videos, all those things were completely put on hold. And yes, this literally happened for 3 weeks straight. Days 21 to 30 were about the same. People say your sleep quality gets better after a couple of weeks. I've noticed virtually no change in my sleep quality. I slept significantly more. I would say that by the 3rd week, I didn't have to nap every single day after work, but I was still napping probably every other to every 3rd day. I still was extremely foggy. I was a big zombie at work, and I was just overall irritable, and it was miserable. So on day 30, I said, okay, I've written it out this far. I'm gonna keep doing this until I see some actual benefits, because people on YouTube and my friends are all telling me, oh, it's the best thing you're ever gonna do in your entire life. And I didn't believe them. But I said, screw it. Once I see one single benefit, if it's good enough for me to quit, then I'll keep quitting. And if it's not worth it, then I'll have my coffee. And I walk by the coffee machine every single morning from day 30 to 35, all feeling the exact same side effects that I did before. And sure, I might have slightly gotten less brain fog, slightly been more motivated, but it was nothing significant. It was nothing like it was like when I was on caffeine. And so I thought, I'm gonna have to have coffee to live this life. And I was even more so worried that the only way I was ever gonna be able to do anything for the rest of my life and be productive was by having caffeine. But on day 35, I woke up and I finally was no longer in a fog. So I see all these people who do 30-day challenges of quitting caffeine, and I very quickly realized why they sit there and say that it's the worst thing of their entire life, because they didn't get to that day where you finally see the benefits, where, you know, the sky finally gets clear, it's no longer raining on you, it's not foggy anymore, and that's what day 35 to now was. What were the major benefits that I started to see all of a sudden? So the first one was directly associated with my mood. My irritability is essentially gone. I'm a lot more of a stable person. And, you know, that's kind of expected, honestly. I mean, there's a stereotype behind, don't talk to me until I have my coffee. Now, it's not an issue, because I never have coffee. So, if you never have coffee, you never have to worry about not talking to me until I have my coffee. I would like to say my relationship has gotten better since I quit caffeine, simply because I'm not as sensitive or irritable to a lot of comments or like just little things, you know. If you live with somebody, you know, humans are annoying. That's just what we are. You know, I do things that are very annoying. She does things that are very annoying. It's just part of it. Since I quit taking caffeine, I've been able to shrug things off my shoulder a whole lot easier, and I don't have that irritability whenever I'm coming off of having caffeine. And I definitely don't have that irritability when I first wake up and she's like scraping her toenails on me or something weird like that. My motivation and discipline have changed since I quit caffeine. I don't know if I'd consider it to be a good or a bad thing. It depends. You guys can be the judge of this. Whenever you have caffeine, you know, you get that instantaneous, just like, oh, I gotta get it all done. I just want to work and work and work until my hands bleed. Whenever you quit caffeine, you don't have that extreme drive. You have more of a steady motivation, which to me was better, because with caffeine, you know, you're highly motivated for 3 hours and then you're a deflated balloon after that. While this, you're a very steady, you know, slow and steady wins the race type of person. You know, you're not going to be, you know, writing a 20-page paper in 45 minutes, but you'll be able to write a 20-page paper over 3 hours. And then you'll want to do something else and another thing for 9 hours, rather than just working really hard for 3 hours and then giving up. And to me, that was beneficial because I'm more likely to do things like this, making a video in my after hours, rather than coming home being exhausted after a day of work and having no motivation to do anything and just laying on the couch. The other proof is I feel like I'm a little bit more creative because I'm not this deflated balloon whenever I get home. My social medias have been able to grow a little bit better because I have more brain power at the end of the day without caffeine than I do with caffeine, because like I said, you work really hard for 3 hours with caffeine, and if you don't have more caffeine, you're done for the rest of the day. While if you don't have caffeine at all and you're completely caffeine free, you're gonna have the slow and steady motivation, and you can go for 18 hours, 20 hours. I've had days where I've woken up at 5 in the morning and I have driven until 1 a.m. technically the following day, so it'd be a 20-hour work day essentially. And I was happy and positive the entire time that was going on. And then I woke up 5 a.m. the next day and then continued to drive, and then I went cliff jumping and had the best cliff jumping day of my life. So without caffeine, you just have, I wouldn't say endless energy, but you have a more sustainable energy. The next big thing for me that I consider to be a massive improvement was the reduction of my anxiety. Things that used to stress me out and make me anxious, I would overthink in the past. I don't overthink. I'm able to have a more clear risk versus reward analysis, and I think that has been highly beneficial. I mean, I'm buying a house in 2 weeks because I've finally been able to, I guess, justify it in my mind, the risk versus the reward. And I don't think I would have been able to do this if I had the elevated anxiety levels that I had before. Thinking I'm gonna get laid off all the time or get fired, or Jay and I are gonna split, or Jane's gonna lose her job. You know, the voices of fear, or not fear, of irrational fear get drastically reduced whenever you quit having caffeine every day. I don't know if this is a benefit. Once again, you will have to be the judge of that. I stand up for myself a whole lot more. I'm more opinionated. Whenever I had caffeine, I kind of just was going with the flow and I didn't really care which direction it was going. But now since I quit caffeine, I feel like I don't have an issue with vocalizing my opinion. And that could just be because I went 35 days where I was extremely irritable and I just built that habit, or it could be a benefit of not having caffeine. I can't really answer that, but that's just my personal experience. And a really unexpected benefit that I didn't get from quitting caffeine was my teeth got whiter. And when you think about it logically, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, Coke stains your teeth, coffee stains your teeth, tea stains your teeth. So I pretty much went from having all this teeth staining liquid to just pretty much water. Overall, was it worth it? The benefits, in my opinion, are worth it now. Could I do, or would I do, another 35-day detox ever again in my life? Probably not. I can't waste another month and a half of my life again. That was a horrible experience. The fogginess, the extreme exhaustion, it was horrible. But once I got to the other side, it made it so obvious why I did it. Would I do it again? I hope not.